our little refrain talks about becoming, our becoming. So this poem that I've chosen to share with you now at the beginning of this session is called Called to Become. You may know it or you may not. You are called to become a perfect creation. No one else is called to become who you are called to be. It does not matter how short or tall or thick-set or slow you may be. It doesn't matter whether you sparkle with life or are silent as a still pool. Whether you sing your song aloud or weep in darkness. It does not matter whether you feel loved and admired or unloved and alone. For you are called to become a perfect creation. No one's shadow should cloud your becoming. No one's light should dispel your spark. For the Lord delights in you, jealously looks upon you, and encourages with gentle joy every movement of the Spirit within you. Unique and loved you stand, beautiful or stunted in your growth, but never without hope and life. For you are called to become a perfect creation. This becoming may be gentle or harsh, subtle or violent, but it never ceases, never pauses or hesitates. Only is. Creative force, calling you to become a perfect creation. There are times in our lives, and this coronavirus season, I think, is one of them, when so much that we've thought of as normal feels as though it's been swept away almost overnight. We find ourselves in a strange liminal space where we've been forced to let go of the trapeze bar of what was. There's nothing substantial to hold on to, and it feels as though we're flying helplessly through the air in a kind of slow motion. There's a strange sense of unreality. And as yet, we have no very clear idea when the trapeze bar of anything like a new normal might take solid shape so that we can grasp hold of it. I think that's certainly true for us as individuals, families, communities and nations during the present pandemic. And it's also true for us as individual churches and as the wider church. We thought a little bit in an earlier session about the dangers of losing the balance between our contemplative being and our active doing, ending up being unhealthily driven rather than drawn, and ultimately running a serious risk of burning out. And I think sometimes the church can be to blame. Former Bishop of Oxford, John Pritchard, wrote that the church has an unfortunate tendency to consume its members. Christians are drawn deeper and deeper into church-related activities, forgetting that the energy of the Holy Spirit is centrifugal, constantly trying to throw us out into the community beyond the church. And that's an interesting thing to ponder in these times of online church. Are we actually opening our doors wider by not being able to meet in our buildings? It's a debate that's very live at the moment. But sometimes that danger of burning out, of doing too much, is simply because we just end up saying yes to too many things, feeling under pressure to do stuff that might not really be ours to do. And with so many other people often busy around us, not only in the church, but in a society increasingly characterized by busyness, at least until coronavirus hit. We can even feel a need to be seen to be being busy. Not just a need to be needed, but being seen to be busy. For some of us, I suspect the busyness has even increased during lockdown. That's why times like this, on a retreat or a quiet day, can be so important, whether we're at home or away. They give us a much needed chance to rest and simply be in God's presence, to do a bit of a spiritual stocktake and attend to our spiritual health. But in that place of stopping and being, the pondering where we've come from and how we've ended up where we are now, we can find all kinds of feelings and questions coming to the surface. Some of that may be about a renewed sense of thankfulness, a counting our blessings, a kind of making peace with the journey so far and the place we're now in. Some of what comes to the surface may include doubts and regrets, perhaps a belated grieving for those people or things we've lost. I think partly that can depend on temperament, but I think those things can be true for any one of us. We have to entrust ourselves afresh to the Holy Spirit's work in us at these times, that God creating us, shaping us like the image of the potter with the clay. And it's important when we notice how we're feeling that we don't judge ourselves. I know that I've certainly been experiencing a mixture of all of these things and more over these past few months. I've said a little bit about that over the last few days. And I think that it is absolutely normal and okay. I have to keep telling myself that, but I really do think that. As I said this morning, I think there's something about the nature of this current pandemic situation that can have the effect of bringing other things to the surface. It's why I find those Margaret Silf words that we've been saying together at the beginning of every session so helpful. They remind us that in God's economy of love, his mercies are new every morning, and wherever we find ourselves, and however we've got there, there will be blessing and grace and a place for each of us as we are. This afternoon, we're going to follow the same pattern we used this morning. We're going to have our Bible reading in just a few minutes, and then our times of personal prayer and group sharing, I think probably in breakout rooms. But I'd then like to reflect a bit more myself on the reading before we move into our time of closing worship and we go our separate ways for the rest of the day. I'm just going to put another slide up. Our reading this afternoon is taken from John's Gospel again, chapter 21. I'm just going to read the second half of it for you, but if you want to, when you come to your time of prayer, you can go back and look at the whole chapter. In a sense, this story is like a mirror image of the Gospel reading from Luke that we looked at yesterday morning, the calling of Peter and the first disciples. Once again, the disciples have been fishing all night and caught nothing. Once again, Jesus is standing on the beach in the morning, though this time they don't recognize him straight away. Once again, there's a miraculous catch of fish for the disciples, Though Jesus on this occasion has obviously had a successful private fishing trip already, because if you remember, he's cooking breakfast on the beach for them, and bread and fish are already grilling over a charcoal fire. He's the one offering them hospitality this time. On that first occasion, 3 years previously, they'd been the ones playing host to Jesus in their boats. We were thinking this morning of the journey of Jesus' relationship with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, and his Bethany home from home with their family. We've been thinking about what may have come up for us as we've been reflecting on our own journeys over the past few days, where we've come from, where we are now. And I would encourage you to continue to pray with and process all of that in the coming days, whatever has come up for you in this retreat time. There's no rush to move on if God is speaking to you about particular things. You can come back to them. Keep talking to him about it all, even as you're walking with Jesus, like the disciples on the Emmaus Road. But in terms of this retreat, it's time to begin to think today about where we may be going. So for the rest of this afternoon, my prayer is that we'll allow the Holy Spirit to help us make the connections between our own journeys and the journey of Jesus' relationship with Peter. Where Peter had come from and where he might have felt he was at this point in the story. Did he have any idea about where he might be going when Jesus invited him to take that post-resurrection walk together on the beach after breakfast? So here's our reading, and we will come back together just before 4:45. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this, he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. He was the one who had reclined next to Jesus at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me."